Seeking the truth never gets old, even when it hides in the shadows. Immerse yourself in the world of June's Journey, a free-to-play hidden object game set in the roaring 20s. Solve the mystery of the devious gossip spreader and celebrate our 7th anniversary with exclusive events, never-before-seen decorations, thrilling mysteries, and exciting giveaways. The adventure and the gossip awaits. Are you ready for the journey? Download June's Journey today for free on Android or iOS.
This episode is supported by FX's Grotesquerie, a new series from executive producer Ryan Murphy. Heinous crimes unsettle a small community, and the local detective feels these atrocities are eerily personal, as if someone or something is taunting her. Starring Niecy Nash Betts, Courtney B. Vance, Leslie Manville, and Travis Kelce. FX's Grotesquerie premieres September 25th on FX. Stream on Hulu.
All right, we're back with Deadly Roots, episode 7, and it's just, well, it's normally me and Cindy. Now it's just me and Cindy. My Cindy is working right now, so she couldn't join us, but we wanted to jump on here because we got an interesting request, because we've been doing a lot of deep dives into people in the media, school shooters, presidents, presidential assassins, and so everyone's been kind of talking about it online, and we got a request from one of our listeners, and they asked us, they go, have you ever done any of the school shooters? And school shooters, if you want to define the school shooters, is they happen, it seems like every month now, and it's really horrible. You know, the one that really kind of launched this, even though there were ones earlier, was the 1999 Columbine shooters, Eric David Harris, and also Dylan Klebold. And that was, I still remember when that happened. I was in my car, and I was actually on my way to an appointment, a business meeting, and I remember hearing it on the radio, because it was like, I believe it was like in the middle of the week or something like that, middle of the day, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And initially I thought it was like grown men coming in there and it was some sort of assault. But the more they kind of broke it down, and we found out that it was these two students wearing black coats and dressed, you know, they had guns, and they had been practicing with guns earlier, and they were just randomly shooting people up. And it was really, it really kind of shook the nation. And because now you like the one place that, you know, families, and, you know, you have a young child, you have a child that goes to school, and at school right now, probably, right?
Oh, I don't actually send them to school. We do stuff at home.
Okay, great. Well, then maybe
I'm pretty much getting shot up at school.
Okay, there you go. So did that factor in one of your reasons for homeschooling?
I mean, kind of, because I mean, in Canada, I would have sent them to school, but here, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know. Well, anyway, where school is supposed to be the safe place for your kids to go to every day. Right. And we're finding out more and more that it's not a safe place. And, you know, I went back to my old high school a few years ago, and it was remarkably different. I mean, you know, it was like, you know, my school was like, you could go in anytime you want and stuff like that. Here, they actually had like a sally port, like they have in a prison, where you walk into one section and you're kind of locked in there. You're secured. There's bulletproof glass both on the door and bulletproof glass on the receptionist. And you have to handle your ID. And we're talking like that, you know, really thick, like an inch thick bulletproof glass, like when you go to the bank at a bank teller, that kind of thing. And I had to hand my ID just to go in to kind of just meet somebody there. And the surrounding, it became like a prison. So the fact that, you know, it's been like that now since 1999, and we're still having them, you know, the Parkland ones, you know, there's been so many. So I thought it was a really interesting question when one of our viewers asked, they go, have you done anything about the Mayflower serial killers connected to all of these young people who are going into schools and shooting them up for whatever reasons? I mean, there's a whole lot of, you know, I mean, And you found some interesting stuff. And granted, there's a lot of school shooters. We were only able to get about 4 or 5 of them for this session, but I'm sure there's more connections here. But let's just talk about well, since we just talked about the first one, the preeminent one that kind of kicked it all off, that kind of really shocked the innocence of our nation, is the Columbine one that we're still kind of talking about. So let's talk about Eric David Harris, right? So let's talk about what you found out about him.
So I haven't completely finished his tree yet, but I'm very excited. He has Fuller in his tree. He has the Fuller line.
So he's connected to the Mayflower.
He has that Mayflower connection. He actually descends from Matthew Fuller, who was a brother or something, or cousin. He bare minimum descends from John Fuller and probably Robert Fuller, which is the father of the Mayflower brothers. So he's on that line, which has been proven with DNA that it is the same family line. And so he's got that Mayflower connection like that. He's on the Fuller line. The Fuller line now has 23, 24, 25. I don't even know how many killers are on the Fuller line now. That one is the heaviest. So the fact that this guy, and that's just on his father's side. I haven't even started his mother's side yet.
Wow.
So I couldn't say that he has some of the pattern. I don't know if he's got the full blown, which I expect from the Fullers, where they have the recent Europe. So I'm digging and I'll find it. And so that makes him related to you have the I can just list off.
Yeah, rattle off some of the names. I don't have the list in front of me, but the Fuller line.
Patrick Nicholas, Todd Colehep, Gary Heidnick, Jamie Fuller, who's now been confirmed on the Fuller line, Patrick Kearney, Casey Anthony, Robert Perdella, Edmund Kemper. Now, I don't know if it was, I think it was the other one. His friend that did the other has Kempers from Germany, so does Edmund Kemper, probably related on the Kemper line as well.
Okay.
So interesting. Jack Fuller Jr., David Hendricks, Holly Crippen, James Carson, Michael Bear Carson, the San Francisco witch killer, Diane Downs, Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, H.H. Holmes, Otis Toole, and Lauren Thomas. Bare minimum.
Yeah.
And I don't even there's no more room for me to write notes on
my I know. And I've already taken up all my note space too. The Fuller, I can't remember we talked about, but the Fuller line's pretty packed with serial killers.
That is the heaviest serial killer line, absolutely.
So if you have a connection,
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Just pray you got Jesus. Okay.
I just find that just so fascinating how it just, that's
what started the tree. It was the Fullers. I was like, what's with all these Fullers?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it began. It was the Fullers.
Yeah.
Started this. So interesting that so many of them, I think, out of all the killers in the tree, I mean, obviously the trees are not finished. I think just Fullers alone were at 25% of killers have Fullers.
Wow.
A quarter of all killers
are connected to the Fuller
ancestor. That's a lot. For one ancestor, absolutely. That's insane. I think Kimball's in second place at 15 or 16 right now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
All right. Well, let's talk about Dylan Klebold, his partner in crime there.
Right. So he is on the Knapp line. So he's actually related to another one of the
school shooters.
So he's related to Ethan Crumbly, who was a school shooter in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And where you have that last year?
That happened in 2023. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now on the Knapp line, so they descend from Robert Knapp, who was born in 1506. They descend from their relatives, pardon me, are Joseph James D'Angelo, Eileen Warnos, Mark Scott Thornton, Dana Ewell, Timothy Burkhart, Hayden and Bradfield Clark, Ethan Crumbly, as I mentioned, William Steff, and possibly Gypsy Rose. Gypsy Rose has Knapps in her tree, but I kind of dead-ended on her ancestor. I wasn't able to find the parents of that ancestor.
Yeah.
But when I run into a Knapp, it always runs through Nicholas Knapp and then it goes to Robert Knapp. So.
Okay. And then what is like the percentage with the nap? Was that like, since Fuller is about 25%, what is that, like about 15%?
No, that's a drop in the bucket. We have many. It's a lot, but compared to the Fullers, nothing is.
Yeah, and Fuller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What is about that line?
The Fuller line has, oh my Lord, so many generational curses like attached to it. Demons traveling in the bloodline. I suspect that an ancestor sold their soul, and when you do that, I mean, you made a pact with the devil. The demons don't want to let go. So you may have died, but that lives on. It's like a sins of the father thing, which is in the Bible. Be just visited for 3 to 4 generations. So that travels. Now you won't be punished for the sins of your father, but that still travels. Now, if that curse isn't broken, i.e., you haven't started smartening up and putting your focus on God and following Jesus off his, like, the further back you go, there was no Jesus before the 0. Well, there was, but anyway, as a human. So that it travels, and if the curse isn't broken, it perpetuates and it goes down the bloodline. So let's say, even if you way far out, you're not sharing DNA at that point anymore, it doesn't matter. It's the same demons traveling in those lines. When we look at the Kimball line, you'll see we have 6, maybe 7, however many cannibalistic behavior killers. Well, one is the Donner Party mother, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's something. That's not nothing. When people say, well, we're all related, okay, but we don't all share these certain ancestors. And you'll notice that people are drawn to people that are into the serial killers. They're either a serial killer or they're into serial killers, and they happen to have those same family lines. Is what I'm noticing. I have on the TikTok that I have. These people are very, very interested in true crime, and they don't know why they're so drawn to it. And it turns out they're related to a whole lot of them. I have zero interest in killers. I mean, I'm related to a few because of the French Canadian thing, but all French Canadians are related. So if you got any French in you and you did something, you're my cousin.
There you go.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. All right, so that's Klebold. That's Harrison Klebold. Pretty much the origin story, or the one who kind of really blew up the whole school shooting thing in the beginning, where we realized we have a problem here. And
well, that it was a massacre. How many people were unalived in that event?
Yeah. Let me see that real quick. I can't remember. It was a lot.
I mean, God, a massacre. That's got to be a lot.
Yeah, it was a massacre. 13 unalived.
Wow.
April 1999. Wow. Because
really, everything was safe in the 80s. No problem going to school. I mean, you might get snatched, but even in Canada, I think after that event, maybe it took a little bit of time, but they're also starting to do things differently in their schools, like metal detectors, like those in the high schools.
Yeah.
One school I had kind of previewed for my son before he started school. I was looking in Canada. It was a school for smart kids. The door was locked. You had to push an intercom, and I'm like, just to get into that little section.
I know.
And then see the wave at the office or whatever. I'm like, why can't I just walk into the school and go to the office? You know what I mean? I know they're trying to keep the kids safe, but I don't know if that was just because they don't want the kids getting snatched, or if it was a school shooting.
I think it's probably both. I mean, I grew up across the street from 2 schools, like a grammar school and an elementary school, and so and they were not set up for security at all.
Right.
You could get into that school. Plus, the playgrounds were across the street. So if someone wanted to just go in, it was so easy. The access was so easy. It's so strange how different everything is now. I mean, you could literally anybody could walk into that school. Now you can't. Now you can't. You can't walk into any school. It's like a fortress.
Yeah. Well, even these schools in California, they have like the Balky Bartakamus from Perfect Strangers. The door that goes around.
Yeah, the revolving door.
Yeah, that it's the metal gate wags, but I saw that when I first moved here. What's that? Why can't you get into the school? It's weird.
I know, and it doesn't make sense. It's not like this is only happening in big cities. Like, let's talk about next person we want to talk about is Ramos, the Uvalde killer at the Uvalde school in Texas in 2022. I mean, that is completely random. It's in not in a major city. A lot of these things happen in rural communities. We have we're talking about one in next one. We're going to talk about that one's in Georgia that happened in 24. And these are we picked the most recent and the first one to kind of discuss this. So let's talk about him. What was his name again? I know his last name was Ramos.
Ramos. So he was the Uvalde school shooter. Now, Texas, and with a last name like that, you suspect that he is Hispanic, which he was fully. I don't know if he died at the end of that. Anyway, now he had some Texas roots, and before he had some ancestors who were straight from Spain to Texas, but the majority of it's Mexico. If I were to continue down his lines, I would potentially find a relation between him and the guy who inspired Hannibal Lecter.
Oh wow!
And he descends a lot of Mexicans descend from this guy. His name was where's my brain? My husband descends from him too. Geez. He was married to the Juana Trevino. Alonso de la Garza is his name. And I know that the guy who inspired him, there's like 2 or 3 serial killers that descend from that guy specifically. And so then you think to yourself, is it a white thing? And I always feel like people are racist when they say that, but I'm like, I mean, it might be. Because I'm going to tell you the pattern I don't see in these trees. You don't see, like, aside from Mexican, because you get that Native American. I don't run into African American, well, unless I'm doing a black tree. I don't run into, like, Native American in all the white killers. I don't run into them having, like, that's not the commonality.
Yeah.
That's not what they have. And obviously, I can build that farther, finding on those white lines so I can find the connection. But it seems to possibly be a white problem. Like,
well, I'm a big believer. I mean, because you figure they just after the 80s and the early 90s is when they started instituting SSRI drugs for kids. And that's when they were really pounding all the drugs, trying to, especially kids who were that they were diagnosed with ADHD and all that kind of stuff. And, they tried to do it to my son, and I resisted it. I said, no way, he's not taking it. I'm so grateful I didn't do that because, at that developmental stages, I mean, if you were an adult, it's different, but when you're growing up and your brain is still forming, and your personality doesn't really kind of set in stone until 25 to 26, to where you're fully developed and all your characteristics and your all your personality traits, all that stuff. And with these SSRIs that were being basically handed out by doctors like candies, and I'm sure there's some connection to that, in addition to the fact that they come from a bloodline where they're connected to people that have the proclivity to become mass killers. It's crazy. And like, I think more work needs to be done on that, but
easier to manipulate them because now you're putting them on a they're not controlling their actions as much when they're drugged up. Right.
Well, exactly. I mean, I just remember I was, after my father's death, they put me, I was depressed, obviously, and I was dealing with a lot, but they put me on Zoloft for like a week. And I had never, I don't even remember that week. I just remember it's like, if you put it on a waveform, this is the way my entire day was. It was just kind of flatlined. And it was just like I had no appetite. I had no there was no peaks and valleys. Like, I wouldn't get excited about anything. I wouldn't get depressed about anything. It was just literally like someone took a ball peen hammer and hit me in the head 5 times. And I just wasn't feeling anything. And it was just bizarre. And I'm like, and I did that when I was like in my, mid 40s. And I had never taken anything like that before. And so I could see being on like that for a while could really affect it. I had a friend who committed suicide, and later I found out that, and I had no idea that he had been on antidepressants most of his life. And he was the most positive person I've ever met, and never, ever, ever saw this guy in a bad mood. He was just like a piper. and no matter what was going on. And when I found that out, I was just like, oh, and I didn't find it out until his service, his memorial service. And I was like, wow, that explains something. So I definitely feel like these drugs that they're giving kids, be prescribing to them at a very young age. Because you know what happened with my son, when they tried to do that, and then I started reaching out, I started looking for alternative methods and holistic methods. And then I read something about diet, and completely changed his diet. And to this day, I mean, if he has too much sugar, and if he's eating improperly, he nosedives, which most people do. If you eat junk, it makes you feel. But for someone who's, attention deficit disorder, has ADHD, it really kind of affects the mood swings and all that stuff. So
they label all kids ADHD, ADD, whatever. Then they could say, "Oh, your kid's ADHD or ADD." Well, they're children; they're hyper. They're also eating a lot of shit. So
yeah, diet and exercise is usually a good way to cure it. And now, and nowadays, and what the other thing too was interesting. And when I obviously I went to high school 100 years ago, but it was like you had, no matter what, even when I was a senior in high school, you had to take gym class. And they forced you, even if you didn't want it, you had to do something physical for that hour. I mean, I played a lot of sports and stuff like that, so it really wasn't a big deal. But for people who didn't have any activities in their, and they weren't doing something physically, but now, I mean, you look at kids nowadays, they don't have a gym class. They don't have anything like that anymore.
Really?
They took that away. And I don't know why. I mean, like when I was a kid, I mean, JFK, years ago, he started the JFK physical fitness type thing. And you had to, in gym class, the schools were mandatory. Kids had to pass that test. And if they didn't, they had to do something like that. And there's something with that. So once they started getting rid of gym class and physical activity, they started feeding you crap at school, all the sugar. And then they started doping people up with SSRIs. I mean, that's right around the end of the 80s when all that stuff started happening. And then when did the first big one happen? 1999. Not shortly after that, the Columbine massacre. And then you have all these other ones, it's just crazy.
The guys in the gym class in the 60s, those guys were ripped. They were doing monkey bars. Like they had to be like military style gym class.
Yeah.
They had to be fit. And then
they would make you run in gym class.
Yeah. I know. I hated gym class.
Everybody did, because they made you physically do something.
Yeah, I know.
And that's, I don't know why, for the life of me, I don't know why they got rid of it. And like when my son was in high school, when he was in high school, and then because he was on the football team, they counted that as his gym class. So if you played a sport, but that's great if you're in sports, but if you're not, you don't have it. You have to have something to have some sort of physical activity.
It's similar to MK Ultra Mind Control, which was in the 60s, sure. Like they would never keep doing that. But anyway, where they were using psychotropic drugs or whatever to use mind control. What are we doing? Not the same thing? Pumping these kids full of meds and, I
mean, the only one that really speaks about it kind of outwardly and is really unabashed and non-afraid of like any blowback is Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, he really kind of, he knows that they're poisoning the food, they're poisoning the water, they're poisoning our kids. It's just, and he's the only one that's been kind of out there kind of fighting all this stuff. Everyone else, it's all, it's big pharma, and they have, big, all the big business. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I definitely think there's a connection. There's got to be, in addition to with these particular individuals that did these school shootings, and the fact that you only did a quick search on these guys. And once again, I don't give you much time to do this, but it's like, I'm sure if you dug deeper, you probably find a lot more. But just in the short time, the fact that, and let's talk about we talked a little bit about Ethan Crumley, but let's talk about him. He was in Michigan in 2023, again, last year. So let's talk a little bit more.
Now, him and Colt Gray, we talked about Colt Gray, right?
No, we haven't talked about Colt Gray yet. We touched on Ethan Crumley. We'll talk about Colt Gray right after that.
So, he's on the NAP line, is making him related to that other. Who is he related to?
He
We
was
just
Klebold.
Klebold, yeah. So we got two school shooters on that line, and so therefore this guy's also related to Joseph James D'Angelo, Eileen Warnos, Mark Scott Thornton, Dana Ewell, Timothy Burkhart, Hayden and Bradfield Clark, and possibly Gypsy Rose and William Suff as well, for sure.
He's also, I
So
thought he's related to Laura Brand, our serial killer whisperer too.
he is related. The both of them are related to her, so she may want to go and talk to them. I don't know. Hey,
Yeah.
cousins, maybe she feels drawn to talking to them.
Yeah. No, I'm going to let her know. I mean, because she can, with her study and her questionnaire, I'm sure they would, even they're not serial killers, but they're killers. They,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and because I've had that question too. Like, have you looked into school shooters? Have you looked into mass murderers? Have you looked at, you know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
different, and yes, I have, and I've done individual killer trees. So it is the serial killer family tree, but I've added in people who've only killed a few people. Like, they don't qualify for the serial killer title, but
Yeah.
um, and then this guy was only 15. Probably pumped up full of drugs as well with the
I,
ADD,
I don't
depression.
know. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah. So that one was interesting. And obviously, if I were to dig further, I'm sure I could find more connections between other killers.
Yeah. I can't remember
Um,
how many victims he had. Or
I don't
even,
know. Somebody asked me to look into him. I had already added them to the tree. So
let me just type him in real quick. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, Ethan Robert Crumley, age 15, armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, unalived 4 students and injured 7 people, including a teacher.
wow.
Wow. And the thing I forgot to tell you is that, so that's really interesting. But my daughter's high school in her junior year was in a school shooting, and there was,
Oh,
yes, it was
was she there?
she was there. In fact,
Oh,
it was so funny because normally we normally drive her to school. It was her junior year. And then her friend, she got into the habit where her friend just got a car. And so they were
mhm.
picking up all their friends. And so she lived, and it was something weird about that morning. And Cindy was here. She would tell it because she had a really bad vibe. And so she left like at around 7:30. And then literally, I'm sitting there still in bed. And at around just before 8 o'clock, I get a text, and I saved this text from her because it was so scary. She says, she goes, "There's a school shooter in our school." And I thought, I didn't know what to think. I've never heard that before. And
Wow.
then I and this was at Saugus High School in California. It was all over the news. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yes, I am. I'm locked in my classroom." She goes, "We're underneath the desks." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, and then I started texting her again, and all of a sudden it went blank, nothing.
No.
And so Cindy and I got in the car, dressed, drove like a bat out of hell. I was like probably about a 5-minute drive that I did in like 2 minutes. I was flying, and then I was literally, as I was literally, I pulled, like they had the whole thing. The cops weren't even really there yet,
Oh, wow.
so, and then I called, Cindy was on the phone with a friend of mine, whose husband is a sheriff deputy. And
Mhm.
so she's getting real time stuff because he's home and he's hearing it over the radio, and he's saying he's still on the loose, and they confirmed 2 people have been, shot,
Oh, shit.
and at least there, and they're like, they don't know where he is, stuff like that. So we drive there, bat out of hell. I get out, and they had, I parked like a block away. As I'm running right next to the SWAT guys as they're running, as they're throwing their vests on, put their helmet, and they're like in civilian clothes. They came straight from home. They're like
Oh,
pulling stuff out of their car, and I'm running right up against it. And then obviously when we get there, they had it all kind of cordoned off and stuff like that. And just as I was getting there, they were kind of an ambulance was leaving, and one of the victims was coming out, who coincidentally is now in I just saw her in a ad for a congressman, talking about the experience and stuff like that. It was just
mm,
crazy. And then what happened there, it was like, I think there was 2 kids that were unalived. And then one was shot, and she survived. She was the one that was leaving in the ambulance. I actually could see her head in the
mm.
window. and it was crazy. And I'm sitting there, and then finally when I got there, I was getting sporadic texts from my daughter. They had everything locked down and they were clearing everything. They didn't know where the killer was yet. But what happened was the kid, I think he was like 15 or 16 too. And he had apparently took his own life right after he did that. And it was like literally it was like, and these two kids were just like, I think they were freshmen and sophomores. So they were really young. They were in there. They were there early because I think they were in band practice and they had band or like out on the field because it was like, it was in November or something like that. It was just a surreal experience, and I'm sitting there and it's like, you see these things on the news all the time and you don't really, it doesn't connect to you. And then I find out, we had to wait there for hours. They had to sweep the school to make sure there was nobody else there. And then they had to take the kids one by one and put them in this holding area, bus them to the park, which was across the street. And then all the parents had to go to this area in this big field. And they, one by one, they were matching up the parents with the kids. And then I take my daughter home and I literally come home and I still had the TV on. And it was on Today's Show or NBC News, the local, because it was helicopters, news cameras everywhere. And I literally come in and I see us on the TV walking out there. I'm escorting my daughter, Cindy and I, and it was just so surreal. And then literally I get a call, someone, that friend of mine who works for Ryan Seacrest, and he has a radio show. She calls me and she goes, Ryan Seacrest wants to talk to you now, wants to know about this, and I'm like, it was so friggin' surreal that happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I can't remember what the whole investigation with that kid is, but I think he was suffering from some sort of obviously depression. We found out that his dad died like a year before. His dad had he was into guns. He would make his own guns, fashion his own like ammo and stuff. And somehow the kid got a hold of pieces of a gun, ordered another piece online because his dad had done it before. They shipped it to him. He was able to put the gun together, and that's what he used to unfortunately wreak havoc on that school. But my daughter she's still, I mean, she kind of between that and then that was her junior year. Senior year was COVID. So she really didn't have much of a high school experience. So
Really?
but that's crazy. But with Ethan Crumley, so the other guy that you were looking into, the other was in the Georgia that happened just recently.
Yeah, like
This month.
Yeah.
And which I found was really interesting how you found out information on him very quickly. Colt is it Colt Gray? Is his name?
Yeah, Colt Gray. So he is a Mayflower descendant. So that was interesting. He's on the Warren line.
Mm-hmm.
So he's actually related to Jeffrey Dahmer and David Hendricks. And also Taylor Swift.
Wow.
Taylor Swift is on the Warren line.
So she's the Mayflower descendant as well.
She is, yeah.
Okay, well that's for another episode. We'll have to kind of dive into that.
But so we have 2 so far. There's only 4 in the tree, and the other ones might have a Mayflower connection as well. So we've got 2 for sure with a Mayflower tie. And obviously their trees are not finished, so there's plenty more to find. A tree it gets so big. When I find Massachusetts, I usually chase that side, and it's just a fraction of the tree, but there's still so many ancestors because of how it works and how we inherit DNA from people. You have thousands, and so I have to go through all of those, find the birth records, find the marriage records, who you're married to, who your parents. So it's a lot of work, but
wow.
It's
so you just when you're doing this, you're just kind of. It's almost like I think it's like when you look in a mirror, and you see it just keeps on going, repeats.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like, and it's. And how do you sort through all this information? Like, I mean, you do it so instantaneously now, and it just kind
because if I see a name that I recognize, there are so many killers in the tree. I'm like, oh, I know where that's going to take me, and I follow it, and that's where it takes me. Which means that I can do it a lot faster because there's so many killers in the tree. Yeah. Obviously, if I catch Fuller, I'm like, get out of the way! I got to chase this line. So which I absolutely do. I get excited every time I come across it.
You do. You get excited. I remember I get excited texts from you all the time when you find something.
I got another Fuller. And I get very excited. Or like the nap line. So if I find that name relatively early, this is your parent or your grandparents already got that name. Well, I know where I'm putting my focus, and that's all I have to do. So that's why it makes it a lot faster. And then I already know because I recognize the name. I know that's already a killer line. So I've built out the one killer's tree. I've gotten to that ancestor. I then merge the profiles of that ancestor that's already in the tree, and then I add a new note, right? So if you see mine, I've got the ancestor name and then 10 million killers that descend from that one, like
Yeah.
filler. And then there's no more room to write any more names, so I have to. But
You do this all by
that's
hand? You do this by hand?
yeah. Well, I mean, I use a computer. I use a
Computer, but you make all your notes by hand.
yeah.
And then do you actually put it like in a tree?
It's in all in a tree. It's in one giant. But so the thing is, the way the ancestry tree is everybody's always like, "Oh, show us the tree." I'm like, it's not so easy. It's you, your two parents, and it goes like this, and then you have to press a button, and it opens up it even more. Each one of those ancestors, each one
Mm-hmm.
opens it up more. It's the way the software works. And so yes, I manually add the records and the ancestors, and I do all that. And then when I recognize a name, like I can search inside the tree to see if that ancestor is already in there. And lo and behold, they are. I can merge the profiles, keeps it cleaner. And then I will work backwards because I don't yet know if there's no note on it who has that ancestor. Then I work and I'll add a note to the one person that I've just built out, work backwards from the other the other person that's in there, and find, oh, it's Jeffrey Dahmer, it's John Wayne Gacy, whoever it is. Going
Speaking of
back.
Jeffrey Dahmer, this Colt Gray is related to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes, he is. I know. That's fun.
That's
So
crazy.
I'm sure he's going to have a lot more connections. Now, even with that guy, I think a lot of that is on his mother's side. And I think his mother was the one with the mental problems. As with another one I did recently, wasn't a school shooter, it was a mass shooter from Kentucky. Oh, well, no, it wasn't a mass shooter, it was Wade Wilson. Wade Wilson's mom had a lot of mental
Wade
problems.
Wilson, yeah, Deadpool
And
guy.
a lot of the killer connections are on the mom's side.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, for a lot of these killers, it is on their mother's side. And then people make the argument for the MAOA gene, but that was supposed to travel only maternally, like mom's mom. And
Mm-hmm.
these, yes, on the mom's side, but it'll go through the mom's dad's dad, the mom. That's just the nature of it. But a lot of
Well,
these,
I mean, based upon Laura Brandt and a lot of researchers' research on serial killers, most of them do have problematic relationships with the mother. Have weird, like I know when when I had this girl that worked for me that whose uncle was Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, and we did a documentary on him, and his relationship with his mother was very strange, very strange. And so a lot of them do have that complicated, strange relationship with their mother. You know, they usually say the trifecta is screwed up relationship with their mother. They like to torture animals when they're younger, and then the other one is the fires.
Mm.
They like to do fires.
Well, like if you look at what just happened the other day, Carly Gregg, she's 15, shot her mother in the face 3 times.
Yeah, I saw that. The one she
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
She's in the tree. She's on the Kimball line.
she is.
That's on her mom's side too. I think it's on the mom's side. No,
I just
on the
don't
dad's
get
side.
why these kids are just kind of flipping the switch.
And they're really like 14, 15 years old.
And they're like no remorse either. She had like no remorse.
And she was giggling. I mean, I think there's some weird shit with the stepdad, but I mean,
Oh,
I'm
you
not
do?
even following it. Some kind of anyway, I don't get into it. But
Well, yeah, abuse usually, I mean, that's coming out with Ryan Murphy's thing on the Menendez brothers. I actually talked to Lyle Menendez on the phone
oh,
while he
you
was in
did.
prison for a while. And
I think Menendez brothers. They're in the tree.
are they in the tree?
They're in the tree, but they have no. It's the dad was Cuban or something, and the mom
Yeah,
was recent Europe or something, Irish. I don't remember.
yeah,
I'd have to, but yeah, they're in the tree as well.
yeah.
But absolutely, it's the father. Oy.
Well, yeah. If you obviously there's that was their defense that they were abused by the father. Even like on the day that they killed him, and I mean, there's all this other crap that's coming out about them as well. But it's weird because I had like probably like a half-hour phone conversation with him, and it was kind of surreal because it didn't like if you didn't hear all the other inmates in the background. I mean, this guy's super articulate. I felt like I was talking to a stockbroker.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah,
But
and
it shouldn't surprise anybody now with all these things coming out about, let's say, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever. The things that elites do, Hollywood people with a lot of money, they're super sick, freaky things, and more of that's coming out now.
yeah,
So,
and their father was in the record business.
oh, hello. He would have
He was
gone
in
to
the
a
entertainment business. Yeah.
Diddy probably went to his party when he was a youngster. So it is prevalent in Hollywood. These people in the high up positions with a ton of money, are into some.
Well, did you see that movie Babylon with Brad Pitt? Okay, well, it's basically about Hollywood back in the 20s and 30s, and it was basically like off screen. It was like Sodom and Gomorrah. It was all this stuff. It was really crazy stuff.
Wow.
Ironically, it was funny. Is my son was an extra in that movie.
Wow.
Yeah, because they were doing this big scene. They were replicating this scene where it was kind of like a fight scene for like medieval times, and the director, because it was like they were filming the movie, and so he had to play one of the soldiers in there, and they had him out there for like a week running in the heat with these medieval costumes on. He came back and he looked, because he was like, yeah, I want to try this, I want to be in a movie, and he came back and he was burnt out. And I'm like, you still want to be in the movies? He's like, this is way too friggin' hard. So he got to move. But that movie is, I mean, now that we talked about it, if you get a chance to watch it, I mean, it's a decent movie, but it really kind of highlights what the bad part of Hollywood, and it goes all the way back to then, like the seediness, the sexual abuse, the manipulation, everyone's willing to do whatever they got to do in order to become rich and famous.
But the thing is, they're absolutely the ones that sell their souls. Those are the ones. And I mean, if you want to make the big bucks, the hundreds of millions, you want that status, the Beyonce, the Jay-Z, the whatever, the Michael Jackson, that kind of status, you got to be willing. I mean, Michael Jackson's a different story. He was probably abused by his parents.
Yes, from a very early age.
That's a whole other show, but we could get into that.
Exactly.
So, but those ones, the Oprahs, the Tom Hanks, and the whatevers, people need to stop wanting to chase that fame and idolizing these people, these musicians and actors and stuff like that. You don't want to know what they are involved in, and the Bohemian Grove type stuff.
Oh yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut. So the movie Eyes Wide Shut. It's not.
Yeah.
It's fantasy.
Well, yeah, it's like they still talk about that. I've seen stuff. The fact that he died of a heart attack before it was released, and they cut out about 25 minutes of the movie that he refused to cut out. The place where they shot that big scene where the party was taken with the masks and stuff like that was actually shot in London at a Rothschild castle where stuff like that actually happened. Wow. So it was like,
I heard that the movie Blink Twice is basically a Diddy party. Some celebrity had said that movie it mirrors like a Diddy party.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy how these things happen.
And there's a lot of like children abuse, like sex abuse with children. It's gross.
Well, I mean, that's what they're talking about with Diddy right now, is the whole thing with Justin Bieber. And, first it was Usher. He was a young kid. And then they used, Diddy trained Usher, and then Usher trained Justin Bieber. I mean, it's like.
Are they saying one guy named, oh, geez, I don't remember. He said he was 15 and Mary J. Blige, when she was 24, was flying him in.
Yeah.
The young. You don't want to get involved in Hollywood. You're just not like that. You don't,
No, who knows what's going to happen with that? I just, talk about that subject matter. If you go on TikTok, it's like every other video someone's talking about Diddy and this stuff. So it's going to be, and it'll be interesting if the government really kind of holds his hand to the fire. I mean, they've done it with Weinstein, and
Well, the thing is, they've always known about it. So in my opinion, they pissed somebody off. because they already knew. And if you're being in the spotlight with it now, because you pissed somebody off, because these elites and the Illuminati and the whatever they're part of.
Yeah.
If you do something, like if you're not doing their bidding the way they want you to do it, they'll out you. And that's the point of it. They have evidence from the beginning. They've got you recorded and they blackmail you with it. They do it with politicians.
Well, what's interesting is that a lot of these CEOs are basically retiring
Oh
or
my God.
resigning,
They're all firing.
including that something came up yesterday. Did you hear about the 23andMe thing?
Oh, that was a few days ago. Yeah.
That was a few days ago. I mean, the entire
the new thing with the CEO stepping down?
the whole board stepped down.
No, but I heard that the CEO has now stepped down since yesterday. It's been several days since 23andMe, the board of directors quit. But
Why do you think that is? I mean, you deal with this stuff all day long. Why do you think that is?
Right. Well, their claim is that they had been in negotiations for 5 months. They're taking the company private. They didn't want that. They didn't agree with that. They're saying that they quit because they don't see a resolution. Or is it because they're customers? Because somebody had posted that, and I don't know if it was her, the CEO, or her sister, but somebody's married to a guy who vacationed, both of them vacationed at Epstein Island.
Oh, okay.
So these people are involved in that kind of stuff. And then people say, well, Blackstone bought into Ancestry. Well, that actually happened years ago. So it makes no difference.
Yeah.
They, that Epstein was interested in DNA and he was something to do with Frankenstein. I think the reason that they're so interested in the DNA, I'm all for it, not for them, for yourself. Getting the information that you need for yourself to find out who your biological people are, you have a right to know. The government's they already know who your people are. They already got your DNA. You ever been to a hospital?
Yeah.
Don't worry. They've
Oh,
got your
really?
DNA.
You think they're just doing it that way too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was the thing. I remember that was the big problem. The question that I had is that, I mean, Cindy was really into it. She got her mom into it. And then, I was a little reticent about it because I didn't want them to have my information. And then we did it. And so they have my information now. What they're going to do with that.
So here's the thing. And I tell everybody this, let's say we're to do Ancestry, and even 23andMe. When you spit and you activate the kit, do not opt in for them to save it for future testing. That way, they process it, they destroy the sample. Your
Do
DNA
they though? Will they though? I mean, it's like, can you really trust them to do that?
No, yes, because here's the thing: the devil's still got rules. He's got him and his minions have rules they have to abide by. So yes, so that's why they have to put disclaimers and all these things in the fine print. They told you the information. They're obligated to do it. So there's
So you
powers
think
and
the devil abides by rules?
he has to. So do the demons. So there's powers and principalities. They're sneaky about it. They're snaky about it. They will tell you what they're doing, and they do it in a funny way, like in Hollywood movies. Or like Eyes Wide Shut, where they're like, "Yep, this is what we do." Hey, doesn't matter if you think it's a movie. This is legit. This is real. This is what we do. Anyway, so you opt for them to destroy it. They process your DNA. You get your matches, and your DNA is data now. It's a series of numbers and letters. They already sell all the information they have on you, like how much power you use, how much water, when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
They know all that about you, and they absolutely sell your information. They do it all day long. We're a commodity. That's what we are. That's what they use us for. We're a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
We're not benefiting from it. So that's why I think you should do your DNA to confirm who your biological people are, because it's absolutely important to know who your ancestors are. It's important to know where they come from. And it is very important to know if you have any of these generationally cursed lines.
Yeah.
Like we're finding with heavy amounts of serial killers on them.
Yeah.
So that you can bring awareness to it and say, oh shit, I had no idea. I think you absolutely need to know that. I think it's more of an eye-opening, because there's only one way to break that, and you need Jesus, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
You need to accept that he died on the cross for your sins and he's your savior. So that's the only way. And that's the only way to get your butt to heaven either. It's through Jesus. So, but bringing awareness to that, I think will open people's eyes to be like, whoa, well, maybe. Because after doing this serial killer tree, I got the answers to everything. I got the answers to life from a serial killer too.
Exactly.
It all boils down
Well,
to
listen. I just want to let's just kind of wrap this up. I have to jump on something else, but this has been fascinating. And then I will talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.